Happy fall, everyone. Today we're going to make a healthy detoxed pumpkin pie. So I've got all the ingredients of my pie crust, which is flour swap, a little granular sugar swap, and some Himalayan sea salt. I'm mixing this well, and then I'm going to add 1/2 cup of well-stirred room temperature butter swap. And we have 1 to 2 tablespoons of some hot water. And then we'll mix this until we get a nice crumbly consistency. Remember, if you have trouble stirring your butter swap straight out of the container, go ahead and just put the entire container into a blender or a food processor, blend it till it's nice and smooth, and then your butter swap will stay nice and smooth for a couple months after a minute or so in the blender. Separation is normal because it doesn't have any binders or fillers. So this is looking really good. And then I'll always get in here with some clean hands, get it to that perfect crumbly dough consistency. We want it to stick together when it's pressed, but otherwise it can stay fairly dry and crumbly. So this is looking perfect. So you can see this texture for the grain-free flour swap, nice and crumbly, sticks together well when pressed. In a quick comparison, this is the same recipe with the whole grain flour swap. This one's going to have a few extra slowly digesting healthy carbs, a little more earthy, grainy texture and flavor. So good though. Same crumbly texture, sticks together well. I'm going to use my avocado oil. I'm going to grease my 9-inch pie pan really well. Now, especially when you're doing a grain-free crust, it tends to stick, so I want to make sure I well oil my pie pan. And then we'll just put all of our crust in our pie pan, and we're going to press it nice and even. And this is the part I typically take my time doing. I want pretty pie crust that's evenly dispersed through the pan, so my crust is pretty even width all throughout my pie. And I've got my oven heated up to 350 degrees, and I'm going to par bake my crust for about 8 minutes. And that's just going to keep our crust from, it's going to prevent the crust from getting soggy as the pumpkin filling goes in and bakes. So it's basically just sets the pie crust so we have a nice crumbly, flaky pie crust in the finished pie. Okay, our pie crust is perfectly pressed, and we're going to go ahead and put it in the oven to par bake 8 minutes at 350. And we're going to make mini pumpkin pies with our whole grain crust. So again, we'll well oil. These are just normal muffin size, about 3-inch in diameter. Make sure you grease really well. I'm dispersing this between 10 different mini muffin tins. You could probably stretch it to 12, but I found 10. A normal 9.5-inch pie makes easily 10 mini pies. And I'm just evenly pressing my little mini pies, nice and thin crust. And the crust is just going to be worked up, probably 1/2 to 3/4 up the sides, and that's fine. The filling is going to come up higher. And we'll stack these on a cookie tray. We're going to par bake for 8 minutes. And then while these are baking, we'll start making our filling. Okay, we're going to whip up our pumpkin filling. I've got 2 egg swaps, 1/2 cup of well-stirred room temperature butter swap, a little bit of flour swap, granular sugar swap. There's a teaspoon of salt, tablespoon of cinnamon, tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice, tablespoon of vanilla. I'm going to high-speed blend this until it's nice and smooth, creamy, and I'll mix it with pumpkin. I've got 1 full can of open pumpkin there. I'm going to pour in my blended mixture. We're going to mix it together and then pour it in our pie shell. Okay, I've got my pumpkin puree and that blended sugar swap and flour swap and spices and egg swap. I'm going to mix this until it's nice and smooth. My crust is perfectly par baked, and we'll just pour it in our shell and bake. Pour our pumpkin pie filling in our crust. Before I bake, I'm going to cover it with some vented foil so the pie is going to be able to fully bake without the crust burning. And so make sure your vented foil is tented so the pie can expand without running into the foil. And I've turned down the oven 325 degrees. We'll bake this for somewhere around 50 minutes. I've done the exact same technique, same recipe with my whole grain swap to make my mini pies. And I'm just going to pour equal amounts of filling in each par-baked crust. Okay, I've got 10 portioned mini pies, and I turned down my oven to 325 degrees. I'm going to bake these for about 35 minutes, and I'm not going to worry about putting foil on top because none of the crust is sticking out on these pies.